The United States Constitution is the bedrock of American democracy. It outlines the powers of the government and the rights of the people. Changing the Constitution is no small feat. It requires a complex process with a high threshold of support. A constitutional convention represents one path to amendment, a path rarely taken in American history. Article 5 of the Constitution provides two ways to amend it. The first and most common method involves Congress proposing amendments. This requires a two-thirds vote in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. The second and more extraordinary method is a constitutional convention. This convention can be called by Congress upon the application of two-thirds of the states, which is currently 34 states. A constitutional convention has never been successfully used to amend the Constitution since the original convention in 1787. This historical rarity underscores the significant hurdles and potential risks associated with such an endeavor. The last and only time the Constitution was amended through a convention was at its very inception. While the prospect of a constitutional convention might seem appealing for enacting sweeping changes, the potential consequences are far-reaching and demand careful consideration. The very foundation of American governance could be reshaped, for better or for worse. The idea of a constitutional convention holds a certain allure, especially for presidents seeking to make a lasting impact on the nation's governance. It presents a unique opportunity to bypass the often gridlocked legislative process and address deeply entrenched issues. For a president unable to achieve key policy goals through traditional means, a convention can seem like a tempting solution. Imagine a president facing staunch opposition in Congress, unable to advance their legislative agenda. Frustration mounts as key priorities remain unfulfilled. In such a scenario, the prospect of a constitutional convention, where the very rules of the game could be rewritten, might appeal to a president eager to enact their vision for the country. A convention could be used to address a wide range of issues that have frustrated presidents for decades. A president might see a convention as a way to finally achieve a balanced budget amendment, impose term limits on members of Congress, or even grant the president greater authority in foreign policy. The possibilities, while exciting to some, are also inherently unpredictable. However, this potential for change comes with significant risks. A convention, once convened, could spiral beyond the control of its initiators. The delegates, elected by the people, would have the power to propose amendments on any issue, not just those envisioned by the president who called for the convention. This uncertainty makes a constitutional convention a double-edged sword. The prospect of a constitutional convention evokes both excitement and anxiety. On one hand, it holds the potential to address long-standing grievances and modernize the Constitution for a changing world. On the other hand, it opens a Pandora's box of uncertainty, with the potential for unintended consequences that could unravel the very fabric of American democracy. One of the most significant risks is the lack of clarity surrounding the convention process itself. Article 5 provides only a skeletal framework, leaving many questions unanswered. For instance, it remains unclear how delegates would be chosen, how voting would be conducted, or whether a convention could be limited in scope. This ambiguity creates fertile ground for political maneuvering and legal challenges. Opponents of a convention fear a runaway convention, where delegates exceed their mandate and propose radical changes that lack broad public support. The lack of historical precedent only adds to the uncertainty, making it difficult to predict how a modern-day convention might unfold. Despite the risks, some argue that a constitutional convention is necessary to address the challenges facing the nation in the 21st century. They point to the increasing gridlock in Washington, D.C. and the growing partisan divide as evidence that the current system is broken. For them, a convention represents an opportunity to hit the reset button and create a more perfect union. The possibility of a constitutional convention is not merely an abstract debate confined to the halls of academia. It is a live issue that has sparked passionate debate across the nation, dividing Americans along political and ideological lines. Public opinion on a convention is sharply divided, reflecting the broader polarization within American society. Recent years have witnessed a surge in state-level activity related to calling a constitutional convention. Some states, driven by concerns about federal overreach and a desire for greater state autonomy, have passed resolutions calling for a convention. Others, alarmed by the potential for a runaway convention and the prospect of radical changes to the constitution, have rescinded previous calls or passed measures to limit the scope of any future convention. This patchwork of state-level action reflects the deep divisions within the country regarding the proper role of the federal government and the sanctity of the Constitution. It also highlights the complex political calculations involved in any attempt to amend the Constitution. A successful convention requires not only broad public support, but also a coordinated effort among the states. The debate over a constitutional convention is ultimately a debate about the future of American democracy. It forces us to grapple with fundamental questions about the balance of power, the nature of representation, and the values that should guide our nation. As the country continues to grapple with these issues, the possibility of a constitutional convention will likely remain a topic of intense discussion and debate for years to come.